Oh, college students, visitors, guests, you don't know how good you have it. You don't know how good it is to be in college. Just wait until you get into the real world. I hate that phrase. I hate it a lot. This is your real world, right? Shouldn't have to justify your real world. You shouldn't have to justify your reality. There's no more real world to you than what you're living right now, right? I was one of those, I can't wait to get into the real world type of students. I was a triple major, so I was way an overachiever. I had a minimum of 3 jobs at any given time, which was a terrible life choice. I was constantly either maxing out my credit hours or overloading my credit hours, all because I wanted that career. I wanted that resume booster, I wanted that job, I wanted that next thing. I lived in a world of what's next. I cared so much about what's next. I was always thinking about how I could do better and be more and constantly get the grade so that I could do the next thing and get the internship and get the practicum and get this and that and the other, because what's next mattered so much. I cared so much about getting into the real world that I really don't remember my freshman, sophomore, or junior year all that well. I loved this place, I loved the experience I had, but I don't remember those years that well. And then the summer after my junior year hit. And my boyfriend of 2.5 years at the time broke up with me a week before he was supposed to go with my family on a week-long vacation to the Smoky Mountains. I'm not dissing at all on college relationships. They are very real. This was the guy I thought I was going to marry. We've been together for 2.5 years. Everyone on campus knew us together. I knew his family. He knew my family. We had talked about a future. And then like that, it was gone. And my what's next mentality shattered. Because I really wasn't thinking about what's now. I wasn't pondering the what's now. I wasn't thinking about what's happening now. I was constantly thinking about what's next. And so I had to go on this family vacation because you can't really say no to your family, right? Like, I had to go to this lodge in the mountains and it was going to be great. I spent the first half of the week laying on the couch in the den watching Food Network. Anybody else Food Network fans in the room? Yeah, I'm not dissing on Food Network. It's great. I love me some Food Network, but I probably shouldn't have just laid on the couch watching it for half a week. I learned a lot about creme brulee that week. It was great. But then my dad convinced me to go on a hike. Who's all been to the Smoky Mountains? Yeah, lots of you. Lots of you. Beautiful hiking. I've been going there almost every year of my life at that point. We hiked every trail. I did not want to go hiking. And I told my dad that, see, at this point in time in my life, I wasn't all that close to my family. There's 8 years between my sister and I. There's 4.5 years between my brother and I. I'm the youngest. I just wasn't all that close to him. My dad spent the majority of my life, though my parents are still married, my dad spent the majority of my life in California, living out in California because that's where his job had taken him, and my mom didn't want to move me and my brother and sister. So I didn't really know my family. But my dad asked me to go on this hike with him. It was a multi-hour, multi-mile hike. First I said no, and then he kind of said, no, you need to get out, you get some fresh air. Food Network will be here when you get back. Cool. So my brother and my dad and I'll go to the trailhead to go on this hike. And my brother, again, he's 4.5 years older than I am. He doesn't really care about my life's problems. He's moved on. He's going to be married in the next year or so, and he doesn't really care what's going on in my life, so he takes off up the trailhead because he's hiked this enough that he's got a time that he knows how quickly he can do it, and he wants to beat his time. So he takes off, and my dad and I are just walking. We're not talking, we're just walking. I'm still in my very much heartbroken world. Many of you in this room have probably experienced a breakup. You know where I was at this moment. This was my what's next, and I didn't have a what's now. So in this moment, I've got nothing else in my world other than I'm walking up this hike that I really don't care about because I've seen it 100 times. But out of habit, I had my digital camera with me. So I have a beautiful, beautiful red Nikon that I love. I'm a hobby photographer. And I had that with me out of just pure habit. My dad and I are walking up this mountain. And it was in that moment that I started thinking about where I was. I really wasn't embracing the moment, but then a bunch of butterflies changed my life. Sounds really stupid, right? A bunch of butterflies. Is anybody familiar with the pipe vine swallowtail butterfly? Anybody? Like, no one in this room, right? Okay, that's totally fine. You don't have to care about this particular butterfly, but the reason I tell you about this butterfly is because it is not necessarily one of those butterflies you see in a botanical garden, per se. Like, it's a wild butterfly. It's not all that special. But my dad and I are walking up this trail, and all of a sudden I see this butterfly, probably 15, 20 yards ahead of me. I've got a really nice camera. I can stand 15, 20 yards back and get a really great photo. So I take a photo, look at the screen, carry on with life. Start walking toward it, and I realize this butterfly's not moving. It's not flying away. My dad and I are walking toward it. It's not doing anything, just flapping its wings. So I was like, all right, I'm about 10 feet away from it now. Sure, I'll take another photo. Took another photo, looked at the screen, it looked great. It's like, I wonder if I could do better than that. So I start taking steps toward this butterfly, slowly but surely, taking a photo like every foot or so. I'm not kidding you when I tell you that my lens ended up being 2 inches from this butterfly that's still flapping its wings. It's not a dead butterfly, I promise you. It was very much alive. And it was sitting there just flapping its wings. And it finally fluttered away when the wind hit some tree branches and there was a rustling. And it fluttered away, and I looked back at my dad and I was like, whoa, that was kind of cool. He was like, yeah, that was really cool. And so, but then we don't think anything of it, we continue walking on. This happened again and again and again. Groups of 1 to 2 to 4 to 7 butterflies. I could get within inches of them, and they wouldn't fly away. It was extremely odd and it was only this one kind. Hundreds of other butterflies we see on this trip because it's fall, and why not? That's what happens in the mountains. Only this one type of butterfly, and they only posed for me. Other people have cameras on these hikes. They tried the same thing. They saw what I was doing. They tried the exact same method I was doing to get close to them. They couldn't get within 6 feet of them. They were only posing for me. So by the time we're on this hike, we've been on this hike for about 2 hours. We're a couple miles in, and we stop at this river area. And by this time, I have like some 500 photos of these butterflies. They're beautiful. I'm very proud of them. But by this time, I have forgotten about the magic of the what's now of the moment, and I'd started thinking about the perfect photo. I started thinking about how can I frame that perfect shot to get this perfect photo, because hey, who knows, maybe National Geographic will pick up my photo and it'll be great. This is the what's next. I'd stopped appreciating the moment that God had given to me on that day. And so we get to this river area, and we had stopped, and I'd set my camera down because, nothing's happening at this little river area. People are like splashing in this river and, just taking a break before they continue up the last couple miles of the hike. And I'm sitting on this rock, and I glance over, and there's this cove to my right. And I see one of my butterflies at this point, like kind of fluttering toward this cove. And I was like, wonder what's back there. I've never traveled back there. Why not? So I get up, and I leave my camera where it was, sitting on the rock, and I start to get up and go over to this cove area. And I turn the corner into this cove, and there are hundreds of these pipe vine swallowtail, blue iridescent butterflies fluttering everywhere. My dad's kind of come up behind me, and he's smiling because that's, dad knows what's up. And I start to turn to go back to get my camera, and he stops me. And he says, no, don't look at this through a lens. Be right here. And I stopped. I said, I wondered what I can do with this. So I started taking steps toward these butterflies because they're a good 10, 20 feet away from me in this cove. By the time I got to the center of that cove, they are surrounding me. I am literally standing, like, the scene in Batman where he's like stands up and the bats are all flying around him? That was me with these butterflies. It was extremely cool. It was this moment that I wish I had photos of, but they wouldn't do it justice, guys. Like, I could show you what that looked like on the screen. I could have shown you 500 photos, but nothing compares to what I remember standing there in this cove with hundreds of butterflies that were there only for me. And it was this aha moment for me of being in the moment, appreciating what's happening right now. We come back from Tennessee. I start my senior year, and my worldview changed. I started spending less time on homework. Sorry, professors. Some of them are in this room right now. Started spending less time on homework and less time in the computer lab and more investing in the students and the friends and the relationships that I had. I started thinking a lot more about what I could learn and not what I could memorize. I am really good at memorizing for an hour before a test. A lot of you in this room could say the same thing. My senior year, I probably learned more in my senior year about nothing that related to my degree than I did in the other 3 years of college. I took classes that had nothing to do with my major just because they were interesting to me. I already had the credits to graduate. I didn't need this. But I started taking things that I wanted to learn because I realized that I was missing out on the what's now of these moments. I was forgetting to appreciate what was happening right in front of me. I had all these opportunities, all these people, all these incredibly smart professors who could teach me something that had nothing to do with my degree, nothing to do with my major, nothing to do with my career, but everything to do with teaching me about the world, teaching me about life, teaching me about people, teaching me about myself. And I really, truly embraced my senior year and loved it. Graduated, it was awesome. I started focusing on what I could learn, and it was great. But I graduated in 2010. It's 2019. There's been a lot of time that happens there, right? So I'm a what's next person by nature. So I have to constantly remind myself of that. And so time went by. I graduated, got a job, got the career of my dreams, got married, had a life, had all these things happening, and I got really entrenched yet again in the what's next. Guys, I got my dream job at 23. I wasn't working here at 23. I got my dream job that I wanted. I wanted to be the editor of a magazine at 23 years old. I got that job. I loved that job. I got bored with that job. I needed my what's next. I desperately wanted my what's next. And so I had forgotten about the butterflies. I'd forgotten about that moment. I hadn't thought about that moment in years, so I'd forgotten about it. And then, this is a traditional trip. My family goes to Tennessee, to Gatlinburg. We stay in the same lodge in the Smoky Mountains every year. So it was that time of year again. We're going back there. And has anybody who has gone to Gatlinburg hiked chimney tops? Familiar with it? A couple of you? Okay. It's not an easy hike. It's a really challenging hike. We call it Oh Jesus Hill. Because every time you circle and you turn a corner, you see this incline, and it's a lot of rocks and a lot of steps, and you just go, oh, Jesus. So it's a lot of oh, Jesus hills. But my dad convinced me and my husband and my brother to go on this hike. And my husband and brother run up the hill, or mountain, because that's apparently what you do. My dad and I are just walking up this mountain because that's what we do. There were no butterflies on this trip. No butterflies at all. I'd forgotten about the butterflies. I'd forgotten about what that experience was. And so we're climbing this mountain. We're hiking up chimney tops. And when you get to the summit of chimney tops, and you get to the top of it, there's a place where 98% of people stop. And there's some trees at the top. There's some boulders to sit on. It's beautiful. You have one of the best views. It's gorgeous. But then there's like two rock faces. That's why they call it chimney tops, because there's like these two like almost straight up rock areas that you can scale at your own risk that form the chimney component to chimney tops. So we get to the top, and every year before this, my dad, my brother, and my husband and I had always climbed the rock face. And this year, we're getting ready to climb this because it's what we do. We know how to do this. And I look back at my dad, and he's just sitting on this boulder. And he says, and I said, are you coming with us? And he said, no, this is where I'm supposed to be right now. And so he sits there. The three of us climbed these rock faces, which was really kind of stupid of us because it had rained the night before, so it was super slippery. Not the best idea we ever had in our life. But the view was beautiful, it was wonderful. Climb back down, vacation ends, we go home. I'd forgotten about this moment and what my dad had said until a week later, when I got a call from my mom that told me that my dad had passed away in New Jersey from a blood clot that went to his heart. And in the awful of that moment, the first thought that hit me was that my dad understood better than anyone I know what it meant to be in the what's now of a moment. Some of the last words I really remember him saying are, this is where I'm supposed to be right now. And again, I had my butterfly moment. There were no butterflies in that scene with him, but it was a butterfly moment for me to remember that in the awful of that moment, there was something good that I could take from it that reminded me of the what's now. I could talk a lot about these moments that I've had in my life, but you've all had them too. There are verses I could talk about. The lily of the valley, how God clothes the lily of the valley, and don't worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow has enough worries of itself, because God's going to take care of you right now. I've had to remind myself a lot of that, but I'm bad at reminding myself about that. God's really good at it. I have a 1-year-old and a 3.5-year-old, and I love them a lot. My 2 little boys remind me a lot that I need to be in the moment, but no more poignant time did this happen than last month. Last month was a really, really busy time in my office. My staff and I had a lot of things happening. There were a lot of projects due, a lot of things, a lot of big things. Remember that October 17th event? We had a lot to do with that. And so I was putting in a lot of late nights. I was putting in a lot of late nights. I was putting in a lot of work at home, trying to get projects done. And after about a week and a half of really not seeing my kids at all, and they were great through the whole thing. After a week and a half of this, it was a Friday night, and I got to a point where I was working at home, and it was like 5:30 at night. My boys are playing outside with my husband. We're having a grand old time, and I'm working on a project at the kitchen table, and I can see them, and I just get to a stopping point at this project, because I needed to clear my head a little bit. So I walked outside, and in my head, I'm still thinking about this project. But I walked toward my 3.5-year-old. His name is Xander. I walked toward him, and he's playing in a pile of leaves, having the time of his life. And he runs toward me, and he's holding this beautiful, perfect leaf still in his hand. And he runs toward me, and he hands it to me, gives me this huge hug, and he says, "Mommy, I'm so glad you're here right now." Guys, I almost started to cry in that moment, because in that moment, I had forgotten about the what's now. Yes, my job is important. I love what I do. I love my job. But I had forgotten that in that moment, my 3.5-year-old needed me a lot more than that project needed me. What's your what's now? What's your now? Yes, your future is important. You're at college partially because you want to get a degree and get a good job and all of those things. That's important. It is important, and we want to prepare you for the future. I want to prepare you for the future. I want you to be prepared and look forward to your future, but not at the cost of what's now. Some of you right now aren't even listening to me. You're thinking about projects that you have to do, homework that you have to do, a paper that you have to finish, a job that you have to get to. Some of you are using this time right now to zone out, to take a minute, to recalibrate, to watch a TV show, to scroll on Facebook. You know, I don't blame you for any of that. But are you doing it for the experience of what's now? Or are you doing it to avoid what's now? I love looking to what's next. I love thinking about what's next and where we're going to go next and what the next project is and all of those things. But I wish you more than just the what's next. There's some prospective students here right now that aren't even in college yet, that you're thinking about being here and being in this place and in college, and so the what's next is constantly running through your mind, and that is so important. But have you spent time for you? Have you spent time learning from your professors and not just memorizing what they say so you can pass their test, you can write their paper, and you can get the grade? If I ask this question in my class a lot, what did you learn today? Because I have them scroll on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and ask them what they've learned. And it's amazing what you can learn in 10 minutes if you take the time to actually learn it and not just memorize it. If you take the time to be in that moment with your friends at the DC instead of just looking at your paper and remembering and memorizing the notes so you can take the test and get the grade. I want you to appreciate and enjoy your college experience so badly because I didn't. I don't want to go back to college. I had a great time, but I remember my senior year and that's it. Do you remember your past year? Do you remember your yesterday? Do you remember the day before? Will you remember what I said right now? I don't care if you remember me being up here. I don't care if you remember what I've said or what we've talked about in this moment, but I care a lot about what you're experiencing now. Are you taking the time to participate in that small group, or are you spending that time doing homework? Are you taking the time to invest in those chapel experiences, or are you using them to write a paper? Are you taking the time to spend time with your friends, or are you going to that job? How many times do you sacrifice the what's now for what's next? At the end of the day, we don't have limitless time. You've heard this message 100 times in your life probably, that we don't know what tomorrow brings and all of these things, and that's true. But I'm actually talking about less about what tomorrow brings and more about the fact that we don't know if we have a tomorrow. What are your butterfly moments? God had to slap me in the face with a bunch of butterflies in order to remind me of the what's now. And though I hope you all have a butterfly moment, what is your butterfly moment? How many times has God smacked you upside the head and said, be here now? If I had any wish for you today, it's that you take time today to be in the moment now. Learn from your professors because they're really smart. Learn from the people you work with because they know a lot. Engage with the friends that you have sitting next to you. Don't read during lunch. Talk during lunch. Walk around outside. Yes, it's cold. You'll be fine. Take some time to experience what's there. Breathe the fresh air. Turn off Netflix or Disney Plus. Disney Plus is fantastic. Mandalorian's great. Woohoo. But turn that off and step outside. Go visit your friend. Go eat a meal with your friend. Go to Starbucks and get a cup of coffee. Experience the moments because you don't always have them. No, I wouldn't go back to college. I don't know that you could pay me enough to go back to college because college is hard. Your real world is hard. Am I right? Yeah, you're all sitting there thinking it. No one wants to say an amen, but you're all thinking it. College is hard. Thank you. Thank you for the little amen I heard over here. It's great. I don't want to go back to college, but I wish I could go back to experience the moments that I missed out on because I was too busy focused on what's next. Your real world is hard, but don't let people tell you just wait until you get to the real world because that's a dumb statement. You've all heard it, and you probably get annoyed by it. I said it the other day accidentally to my class, and I had to stop and apologize because I realized it's insulting. I shouldn't be telling you, just wait until you get out in the real world. This is your real world. Embrace it. Experience it. Live it. Love it. Don't wish it away. How many of you wish you could go back to like kindergarten and take all those naps that you got, like you avoided? Oh, yeah. I tell that to my son on a daily basis. My 1-year-old, I'm like, dude, you will never get this opportunity again to sleep as much as you want. I would give a lot to be able to lay in a crib and eat Cheerios all day. Alas, I don't think my boss would let me do that. Embrace today. Be here today. At the end of the day today, be able to remember what you did today, not just that you survived the day. Some days are about survival, but not every one of them. And if your every day is about survival, then you need to be talking to someone about that. What's now? I encourage you today to be in the now. Think less about what's next. your what's next is going to take care of itself. Your degree, your diploma, your resume, your career will all take care of themselves if you are actually living in the what's now. Bow your heads with me. Dear God, this wasn't what I was meaning to speak about 3, 4, 5 weeks ago when I originally started planning this. But then you put a lot of people into my life that ask me the same question over and over again of what do I do with this? Where do I go with this? Why am I here? And I realized that you had a bigger lesson to speak through me than what I had. Your message is more important than what I wanted to say. And I hope that if anything, someone heard what you wanted said today. I hope that someone experienced what you wanted them to experience today. I thank you for the butterfly moments in my life. I thank you for the appreciation that I now have for those moments when I see them. And I thank you that you keep on putting them into my life because I'm really dumb and I forget about it. God, be with these students today and help them to have that what's now moment because you've got the what's next. Amen. Have a good day, guys.